Swami Maharaj. First of all, my respectful obeisances to all who have assembled on this meeting. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. This Friday, we have a very special and wonderful program on Wonderful Friday on the subject of pandemic and the Lord's practical plan with reference to Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Amala Puran, Stream of Vedic Knowledge, Canto 1, Chapter 14, Verse 1. And this will be presented by our special guest, His Holiness Hanumat Presaka Swami Maharaj, a very genius and strict follower of Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya, and a disciple of our founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Just to give you a brief introduction of Maharaj, he was born on the Pacific island of Guam in 1948. He grew up in the sunshine and open spaces of Arizona and California, and then graduated first place in psychology from University of California in 1970. Being initiated by Srila Prabhupada into ISKCON in 1974, later he was awarded sannyas by Bhakti Swarup Damodar Swami of ISKCON Manipur. Thereafter, he went on to make his own humble contribution to the academic and institutional growth of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement at some most prestigious universities, cultural centers, and ISKCON centers around the world. Maharaj is one of the key persons in developing education program for the ISKCON Education Ministry and guiding many devotees in Bhakti Vaibhav program. Maharaj is expert in communicating, or rather connecting, any faith of religion to Krishna conscious philosophy. With this, I will request Maharaj to enlighten us in the prescribed subject matter of today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Hare Lila. Okay. I'll double your salary. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we're going to try and make some kind of little contribution here for the, I guess this is related to the Bhakti Urban Farm International program. And a lot of things we're also developing are very similar. I made a PowerPoint show, which I think should work. So first I'll chant, and maybe Hari Leela, you can respond. You can be our chief guest tonight. So I'll chant, you respond. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 14. It's describing the situation after the Battle of Kurukshetra, and the Pandavas had taken over the world. And things were going on quite nicely for some time. So, okay. Sutta uvacha.
Sutta uvacha.
Samprastite dwarakayam.
Sampratiste dwarakayam.
Jishno bandhu didrikshaya.
Jishno bandhu didrukshaya.
Jnatum cha punya shlokasya.
Jnatum cha punya shlokasya.
Krishnasya cha vichestitam.
Krishnasya cha vichestitam.
Now you chant and we will respond.
Sutta uvacha.
Sota uvacha.
Samprasthite dvarakayam.
Samprasthite dvarakayam.
Jishno bandhu didrukshaya.
Jishno bandhu didrikshaya.
Gnatum cha punya slokasya.
Yatum cha punya slokasya.
Krasnasya cha vichestitam.
Krishnascha chavijestitam. Sutta Vacha, Sri Sutta Goswami said, Parasam Paratiste, having gone to Dwarakayam, the city of Dwarka, Jishnao Arjuna. So here's a name for Arjuna. Maybe we'll find out what it means later. Bandhu, friends and relatives, Didrikshaya, for meeting them. Jnatum, to know. Cha also, Punya Shlokasya, of one whose glories are sung by the Vedic hymns. Krishnasya, of Lord Krishna, cha, vichestitam, further programs of work. Okay, our next slide here. So translation is, Sri Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna went to Dwarka to see Lord Sri Krishna and other friends, also to learn the Lord of his next activity. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord descended to the earth for the protection of the faithful and the annihilation of the impious. So, after the Battle of Kurukshetra and the establishment of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the mission of the Lord was complete. Pandavas, especially Sri Arjuna, were eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore Arjuna went to Dwarka to hear from the Lord of his next program of work. So, of course, this is very appropriate to us. We have a little picture here which shows that Krishna says, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. And that's our, of course, actual situation in the material world, that all of us are being harassed by the reactions of our own stupid activities. And Krishna is trying to get us out of this mess. Of course, some people, are trying to get out, and some people are still trying to, enjoy the whole place. So Krishna is chastising the impious and rewarding the pious. It's the same thing. He's, by limiting people's impious activities and correcting them and educating them, he's doing the same thing. It's whether you're going to take the education from the front or the back. And most of us here are probably taking it from both. We're getting pushed from the back and getting pulled from the front. Yeah. And so we should actually educate ourselves about the negative aspects of the material world. So if we're involved with Krishna, then we have, we're also participating like Pandavas, like Arjuna, everybody else. So here we have a description of the general situation now. Of course, the Battle of Kurukshetra was a gigantic event. So many things led up to it. It was all a part of Krishna's plans. And some people, for example, there was a very, very nice painting of Draupadi, Bhaktisiddhanta Das in Vrindavan, very big devotee. He organized a program along with one big bank in Delhi. And it was Krishna and Rama in modern art. It was a competition. People could submit paintings. And it was amazing how many people actually were doing very deep paintings, even to this day. So second place was a full wall-size painting of Bhishma's face. And it had so many different wrinkles on it. But as you got closer, you saw every wrinkle was a different pastime in miniature. And all the different things he did in Krishna's Leela, they left their marks on his face. It was very profound, very deep, very rich. And in first place, it was a picture, and it was called Draupadi. And it looked like somebody had come and knocked on her door, somebody she knew, like Kunti or something, Draupadi. And she was a young girl, maybe her mother or something. And she was standing there with her hair open and her her night dress, looking a little quizzically. And she had a candle in front of her with her hand in front of the candle, so was just illuminating her face. And so looking at it, I was thinking, well, that's nice, but it's nothing as, because Draupadi was known as a covered flame. But I was wondering, but it's not as deep as the previous one. What's, oh my goodness. And then you see, she's just like an innocent young girl looking, who woke me up, But her shadow is death personified. It's just really, really frightening. You don't see it at first, one lady did it. So that was Draupadi's situation in the whole drama. she didn't know that she was to become the cause of the death of 640 million people in 18 days. And it was terrible. After it was over, there were, wives and daughters trying to collect the pieces of their fathers, one arm here, one arm there, and put them all together. And so as a human being or something, if she knew what she was going to cause, probably she couldn't have just handled it. So sometimes when we're participating in Krishna's pastimes, we don't know everything about what's going on. And Draupadi was content to know that she was playing the part that Krishna gave her. She was complaining to Yudhishthira, complaining to Krishna, but she never lost faith that ultimately things are under control. Yeah, so on. So this is the example of how we're playing. So after the whole thing was over and a lot of Krishna's plan was revealed, and for many years, Maharaj Parikshit had to grow up from being a baby to being about let's say 30 years old or something, 25, 30 years old, at least, maybe more than that. So maybe 40, 50 years had gone by. Of course, people were living to be, long time, 150 years, like that, stuff longer. And so here, these verses, they describe the situation. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed. It even says that usually it came at night, so it wouldn't disturb people. And the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. We're discussing now that mangoes are $1 each. We've heard Prabhupada says that Hawaii is a remnant of the previous yuga. And mangoes go wild in Hawaii. There are wild pigs. And in Hawaii, the pigs eat mangoes. The pigs eat mangoes. No mosquitoes. Devotees there say, if you buy breakfast, you're an idiot. You just go out walking and the neighbors have, fruits and there's macadamia nuts and everything there. So some idea, there was a proper rain, not too much, not too little. The earth produced the necessities in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. You've seen this. Everybody in Mayapur one time, I was walking along the road and some British devotees were trying to show, proper farm management. So right near the side of the road on the way to the Goshala was a pile of cow dung, as it had been mixed with straw. It was about 4 feet high, about as high as my chest. So everybody was thinking, oh my God, you're going to put that, cow dung and straw right by the side of the road, and it's going to cause 1,000 million billion flies to inhabit the whole place and harass everybody. They said, no, watch. So what happened is all the flies, they said, hey, free hotel with free dinner coupons. So all the flies moved in and of course had a whole party and a festival and produced new flies, little larvae, It never came out much at all. Nobody bothered. But then when it came time for the little flies to grow up and go off, they'd already made another pile of straw with cow dung, not too far away. So all the new flies came out and they all just kind of headed for the new pile like that. So they showed that human beings are supposed to be the big brothers. You're supposed to, manage all the other animals and keep them in proper position. And what do the flies do? They what do you call it? They turn all the garbage and all this stuff into proper compost. So everybody, if we're connected to Krishna in the mode of goodness, then the material world becomes an accurate reflection of the spiritual world. So under Maharaj Yudhishthira's guidance, all these things were very, very nice. But then, woo, the background music. I have a background crew here. The coronavirus. Yeah. This is an example of the material world. Janma, Mritya, Jara, Vyadi. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma, Mritya, Jara, Vyadi, dukkha dosh anudarshanam. Always keep a very conscious awareness of these four things all the time. Oh, you guys are pessimists. Well, we're not pessimists, but we're realists, and we're always conscious of the fact that in this world there is birth, death, and in between there is disease and old age. Okay, yeah. Life is miserable and then you die. That's one common American phrase. They use a different word for miserable. Life is miserable and then you die. Yeah. And one scientist I know, he said, and the Hindus say life is miserable and then you die, you take birth again. So this is impetus. Krishna says we should thank Krishna for these things, because these are pushing us to try and get out of this stupid world and go back to our real world. So things like the coronavirus, from that perspective, they're part of Krishna's general plan, broad plan to make us conscious of the fact this is not our home. But Haribol. Is it the coronavirus or the coronavirus? Are the horrible monsters and demons in this world actually just Krishna dressed up with funny masks and playing? Well, yes, they are. But if you face it, demons, you'll see behind the demon the naughty little boy playing. Okay, that's the reality. It's all joking.
Coronavirus.
Okay. Chandramukhi, you have to close your microphone. Chandramukhi, close your microphone. Chandramukhi, Claudia Mouse Josu, close your microphone. Oh, you got it. Okay. Yeah. I know her. She's a very nice person. She's a PhD in ecology. She's going to save the world, along with her dog. So then we're looking as devotees. At the very beginning, I was looking at this thing, and what is this? This is, so that's the point now, that things have been going on very well. Krishna's saved the world, got rid of all the extra demons. What's the next plan of work? So Yudhishthira sent Arjuna off to talk to Krishna. We need some practical perspective now. Things are going on. We're doing our job. But we know this is the material world. We know things are happening. Do you want us to stay around? Or are we all going to be leaving and going to the next planet, next universe? So we have to do the same thing. Vidyavadu Jivanam. That's one of the results of chanting Hare Krishna. That we get knowledge, perspective. So at first initiation, we should understand Krishna is God and I'm his servant. Okay? But it's very general. It's like you got an offer to work for the bank and you don't know if you're going to go into the management line, into the be a bank teller, be a guard, be a custodian. No, but they pay, I work. Okay. So that's basically what first initiation means. By second initiation, formally or informally, we should have figured out, okay, I'm going to be a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Or in my case, I am a Shudra, Brahmana, Brahmana, Brahmana. And therefore I love PowerPoint shows, which satisfies my Shudra nature. And Brahmana, Brahmana, Brahmana means I like getting up early. I like doing intellectual things and all that kind of stuff. So everybody has to figure out, Daivi Varnashram. By the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we're supposed to start becoming practical about applying this. Arjuna has to understand how to apply the ideas in the second chapter in terms of his dharma. That's the whole thing. Don't give up your dharma, but do it for me. That's the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so what is the real coronavirus here? Okay. Hari Leela, what do you see?
Oh, okay. I see the car, I see the people with the machine, something doing there. I see the fish, I see the gazette.
Right in the middle of the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
Okay. And it started, I don't know when it started, maybe I guess in the 18th century. I think it started like, maybe 1890, 1850. And it kind of started with steam power and telegraph. It's before people would write letters, which is graph. So then the telegraph was the long rider. Of course, it's not a long rider. It works differently. So many good historians, Marshall McLuhan, did incredible studies on the history of Western culture and things like this. You know? And so then we started one of the principles of the Industrial Revolution is to try and turn everything into a machine, right? Machines for telling time, machines for cooking your toast, machines for refrigerating your pie, machines for vacuuming your rug, machines for everything, you know. And then we started sucking up all these people to become servants of the machines. And child labor became a horrible thing. We had to pass laws. This is Yantra Vidhi. And there's a whole history of this. We can answer more questions about it. But basically, that's one of the fundamental principles of what was called the Industrial Revolution. Mechanizing everything, mechanizing war. And concentrated expert production of things at one point, and then distribution at a distance. That's part of the general principle. We're going to produce all the vegetables and all the cabbage at one place, and then distribute it all over Texas or all over California or wherever. We're going to produce all the cell phones in Hong Kong and Taiwan and distribute them all over the place. As opposed to village life, people do things locally. And then, of course, all the promises are there. You can look back in the 1950s, and everybody would have a car, and everybody would have in the future, everybody would fly in outer space, and all these things would come. So now, of course, it's come up to the modern time, and it's given us, smartphones, and I can hurl my foul language all over the world. I can insult people, see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil, post no evil. It's the fourth monkey. So we all know and this is the Industrial Revolution. Prabhupada was not opposed to machines. In Vedic culture, there are machines. In Vedic culture, there is, concentration of energy intelligence. We believe that the world should have an emperor. There should be one guy in his nation, managing the things like that. But we're not doing it properly. And so we see the result is that we're killing off all the fish in the ocean. We're killing off everybody, all the bees in the sky. So my supposition now, this is where we start to get into myself and other people too, talking to people. It seems like the COVID virus, the coronavirus, as Krishna is telling us, okay, this is the end of the Industrial Revolution. Yes. And so what does that mean? That means we have to go back to village life. Okay. We have to understand our natural contributions, things like that. And of course, we'll fight the coronavirus, and it won't be so bad. You can see Krishna's kind. He'll force us to try and react to it and adjust by changing things. There was a survey by somebody from the United Nations, and they asked if people wanted to go back to things they thought we could go back to things the way they were before the virus. And 70% of the people answered that they didn't want to go back because that's what caused the problem. So there's a lot of people who are actually realizing we've created a situation which is, we're using Krishna's energy in such a way which is not creating a good situation for anything. And we're about to kill ourselves. So like little children, then the parents start to see that you're misusing these things, and they take them away. So to try and investigate these practical things, to try and go into the modern world, to try and take advantage of these resources, we started NEOS, the North American Institute for Oriental and Classical Studies. We've been doing a lot of programs. We can talk about them, but one of them was about, I think, 2010. It was with the National Museum of India in Calcutta. And we've been doing very good things. It's taken a lot of work, and other people can do a lot better than we can do. But even the dog can take part in this movement and dance in ecstasy. So by just somehow or other trying to help, then we can also contribute something. So we, with the National Museum, we organized a program called the contribution of ancient India for making a better world. It was very prestigious. We had Mukundakam Sharma. He was a justice of the Supreme Court of India. Okay. And our main advisor is Dr. Samaresh Bandyopadhyay. He's head of the Ancient Indian History and Culture at Calcutta University. And so he was also, so many people like that. And they went on for 3 days. So the Ramakrishna mission came, the Bagbazar Gaudiya Math, and so many contributions from so many different people, very erudite scholars. And the museum said usually they got maybe 50 people, maybe 60 people maximum for the individual sessions, because we considered medicine from ancient India, education in ancient India, philosophy from ancient India. And one lady even made a thing on water management from the time of the Guptas, which I guess is before Christ. And she saw the same water management for agriculture, for drinking and for food, for hygiene and for recreation. She showed that basically the same system has been going on for 2,000 years, and it's very effective. So for the watering the crops, for recreation, for swimming and playing, and like that. So very, very many wonderful things. And when it was over, the manager of the museum, this is one of the most prestigious places in India to present. The hall we were using was about 150 years old. And so he said, so Swamiji, Dr. Samaresh, we very seldom get more than like 50 people for each session, because it was 3 days and we had different sessions for different topics. But he said, I counted, and there was never less than 100 people at every session like that. When can we do it again? Yeah. But it was, so here on the top left is Mukundakam Sharma, Justice of the Supreme Court. And he made a very interesting presentation. And Dr. Samaresh Bandyopadhyay, And down below is some of the picture of these sessions and myself, representing Hare Krishna. And then people are interested. Oh, the Hare Krishnas, they can talk about modern things. They give evidence to support their ideas. So one of the things that kept coming back again and again and again in terms of medicine, education, philosophy, water management, all these things, was that the Vedic culture applies for village life. That was just becoming obvious again and again. You're supposed to, the mass of humanity, something like maybe 90% of the population, is supposed to live in a village, okay? And then the Ayurvedic doctors have been there for generations, and they know which herbs grow naturally. They know what problems different families have, education, for example, you can't have like unknown serial killers because everybody knows everybody else. And if somebody comes into the village, and automatically, you ask, well, hey, hello, who are you? Why are you here? Well, I'm a serial killer. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we saw that in all these things, it was just, people are meant to live in villages. Okay. And that's one of the things that the Industrial Revolution, right away, we know that. Every country is trying to build a mega city, and then have a few people living in the country and then try and do everything by employing people. But actually what happens, of course, is a few people at the top exploit everybody else at the bottom. And it's unbelievable. If you ever go to any of these, these high-class hotels, I used to do it in San Francisco. It was the Hilton Embarcadero. It was right on the bay like that. And from the outside, it was kind of like, looked like a pyramid or something, So, and it's like maybe, somebody like $500 a night for a suite. So I kind of, with ordinary clothes, you can walk inside there. And I walked inside, and inside it was like a pyramid, maybe like 6 stories tall. And the whole thing was maybe like 10 stories tall. But within that pyramid inside, there was different places, like little areas, like a Tahiti area where you could drink Tahiti drinks and eat fish. And there was a Spanish area where you could drink tequila and eat something else, It was divided up with little sections of music in different areas. It was like a subterranean celestial planet. Okay, then about 3 stories off the ground, there were 2 levels going all the way around the inside of the pyramid, of different rooms you could rent, suites. And so you could sit there in your room, waiting for your wife to finish her work in the bathroom and dress with your tuxedo for dinner, looking down on these different, Mexican, Spanish, Chinese areas, or you could look across at other people looking out of their rooms. And it was exactly out of something like out of Star Wars. You expected little drones to be flying around, delivering messages. And everywhere, of course, there were telephones, even in the bathroom. You could be sitting on the commode and the phone could ring. You could be talking on the commode. I'm not joking. So these places exist for a few people. And a few people exist at the top. They fly first class, and everybody else in the pyramid down to the bottom, where the mass of humanity have to work in these hellish factories and suffer like anything. That's the only way it works. There are a few people to enjoy celestial pleasures. But when the mass of humanity lives in the village, then everybody can be happy, without excessive desire. There's enough for every man's needs, but not enough for one man's greed. Okay. There's a lot of discussion of this. We'll go on here. So then examples, it still exists. You can see these things very practically. For example, in Russia, I went to Russia 2 times like that. They were asking us many times. So we went to teach Bhakti by Baba. And we traveled around Moscow to different places, Vishninagar, and I remember the names now. The three towns, cities outside of Moscow. And then afterwards, we went to Nizhny Novgorod, I think was the town. And it was Russian. On an ordinary Russian day in wintertime, it's like 50 degrees below zero centigrade, maybe 30 degrees below zero, and on a cold day, it's 50. At 30 degrees below zero, if you spit, it turns to ice. And we'll mention this here. The ladies might want to close their ears. It's okay. One devotee in Canada told me that at 50 degrees below zero, if you urinate, it turns into ice in the air. So it's unbelievable, how the people live there in gigantic buildings and industrialized and cement buildings like 10 stories tall with big iron elevators, and really miserable in some ways. But just outside of the city, many people still have their village homes and stuff, still there. A supermarket is just really nothing almost. It's still amazing that it's still very close to their country aspects of that. So with Vishista, we went out to stayed in the farmhouse that was owned by some people. And it was about 20 minutes, from the town. And so you could take a bus. There were buses going by about every 20 minutes, different private companies, the commercial bus. And it stopped by a little bus stand. You got off there. Then it was like a road, like in Vrindavan, just wide enough for if 2 cars passed, you had to kind of go off the road a little bit. They could do it. And people are walking from the village, which is again about a 15-minute walk from the village, pulling their little hand carts, and grannies and grandpas, and taking the kids off to you catch a bus and you're in the city, and you go around, shop, do some stuff, do shopping, but you go back to the village. That's what living in the village. And the village, it was just a dirt road, crossing the little paved road, which went to the main bus road. And it wasn't very big, on one side was a nice green jungle because it was springtime. And the other side was a kind of a green jungle. And there was a little dirt road coming out of the jungle on both sides, the forest. And people would come out of that on a bicycle and kind of creak by, and they would go through, In the little village, it was just like, if you know Dostoevsky, the famous Russian writer, you can see why it was so good, because guys, there was like a very, very old Greek Orthodox church there. And there was a graveyard. And I was looking at the graveyard, and they had names going back hundreds of years, And they had some newer houses. They were constructing newer houses. But there was one rich man's house, And I would walk along, and you say Germany is the fatherland, right? You say Mother Russia. But after some time, I was saying, but it seems like it's more like grandmother Russia. The Russian devotees are thinking for a second, they were laughing. You say, yes, you're right. That's the icon. In Germany, it's be like, satisfy your father, conquer everything. But in Russia, it's the granny sitting out front of the log house, they're shucking peas with her little hat on, babushka, with some goats there, and pulling her son's beard like to chastise him when he's not doing something right. Yeah. And that's the image. Everybody, wants to take care of granny in Russia and be happy together as a family and, eat pigs and whatever they think. I mean, it's got problems too. But they have log houses. When you get the fire going, the logs get warm and they stay warm. It's very, very interesting how they develop this, but it's village life. And I could just see, it's just like I was walking around, it was just full of personality. You could just see like it was so easy to write a story about the poor boy who fell in love with a rich man's daughter. It was just floating around, and the families were there and the grannies, and it was just like so natural. And I was walking out from the place where we were staying, and devotees had stayed there before, so they weren't like, freaked out by Hare Krishnas. And Hare Krishnas like to dance and sing. Okay, they believe in God. Okay. So I was walking along, and so many babushkas and people were saying hello and saying things in Russian, and all I could say was I didn't speak Russian. And they smiled and waved at me and stuff. So anyway, this is the idea that it really exists, and you're not isolated. You're in the village. But if somebody start having some medical problems, you can get them right down to poor people. You need to go, you can just get the bus and be in the town within 20 minutes. So this is our idea, And of course, if we do this, what we got here, okay. If we do this, then it's very natural to control all these pandemics and things like that. It's very natural then. Just as we're industrializing telecommunication at one point and distributing it all over the world, we're also industrializing the diseases. Diseases produced in China, made in China, and then it's distributed all over the world. The World Health Organization says because of air travel, any powerful disease will be all over the world within 7 hours, the way it was before. Before the way it was, within 72 hours, any disease would be all over the world. And there are many terrible diseases that have incubation periods of 72 hours. So that's when I would say this disease is, you can see maybe Krishna's hand in it because it's not so bad. I mean, Krishna could have produced something that would have destroyed 70% of the world's population within 5 days. That's how terrible we are, how terrible it is. So we need to go back to village life, practically speaking. Yes, there will be an emperor. Yes, there will be kings. Yes, there will be dukes. Yes, there will be counts in charge of counties. And yes, there will be a baron with each village. Maybe a baron will have 5 villages under him and 5 constables, and the count will have five barons under him with 25 villages, the duke. You see, it's very, very natural. So some virus in the Ayurvedic people, and the local baron tells the county, say, we got some kind of disease here, and we're isolating ourselves, and the count will say, okay, thanks for telling me. I'll send a few constables to help out to, make sure that you're safe. And if you need anything, I'll send it and keep me in touch. And so basically, even if it's a virulent disease, which happens, Krishna keeps reminding us, basically within two or 3 weeks, everybody who's dead is going to be dead, and everybody who's alive is going to be alive. It's finished. And so you see, it's very natural, And battles go on at a lower level, and finally, if you're going to have a nuclear war, you have those every now and again, and so on. So there's many, many things you could talk about village life, but this is our perspective that Krishna is pushing us, we can't handle it. We're destroying the world. We know that, and it looks like we can't stop it ourselves. So he's coming along and showing us. And practically speaking, what we're seeing, for example, Radhika Ramandas, our good disciple, he's a professor, he has a house, but now he has kids home for homeschooling. His mother and father is trying to visit and stay longer, other people. So he's realizing his house is too small. So he's buying a bigger house, where people have different places to carry on their lives and stuff, and the parents can be visiting there. So already we're seeing that people should be in the house. There should be many people. The next thing, for example, is, and I've seen this in Chicago, it was so snowy, people will buy an entire block. 4 houses on one side or 5 houses on one side, 5 houses on the other. They buy the entire block out. They take out all the fences in the backyard. And then suddenly you've got a little village right in the middle of Chicago with crime rate and everything else. And you control, the kids can play and the teenagers can spoon, you say in American English, flirt. Yeah, but it's all under everybody's attention. And it goes on like that. So there are very, very many, very nice gradual steps. And here in Nilamada Dham, of course, Krishna has made this. I think Krishna has made this an example of how things can work, And there's a whole community here going around. And then, so it's a matter of almost like, making a gated community or something at some point, Yeah. And yeah, you start to isolate yourselves more and more in different ways like that, And then it becomes very easy to control these things. Where I'm from, Nashville, we don't have that. So there's maybe 5 families within the borough where I am. So myself, Nitagore Sundar Vijay, and Dr. Karan Singh all go walking together. We represent 4 different, houses, maybe a couple more. But we're like 10 minutes apart by automobile. We get together and go walking. We all know each other. We know, everybody's had the shots and distances. And we don't, my stuff, they don't even wear masks. Because we're outside, we're walking, we've had our shots and distances there. So we know. So we have a little community where we share food and things like that. But, when you can start, buying houses nearby within walking distance and everything else, start making a village, aiming towards village life, village education, village water management. But then you discover, okay, again, this is Kali Yuga. So a lot of people won't do that. They'll go on being crazy. But we'll start creating our Hare Krishna villages. Krishna will force us to do this. And after that, we'll start having a Hare Krishna county. If you have one Hare Krishna county, you can be self-sufficient. As far as I understand, the county at that level, at the county level, you don't need anybody else in the face of the earth to produce, reasonable amount of, tools and this kind of pharmaceuticals and stuff. So specifically, and to finish off here, what we're doing with the Anjana Sudha Academy, our particular branch of ISKCON, we're trying to start new Ashokban. Yeah, because maybe in Peru, we'll stay for 6 months in Peru and try and give an impetus here for this. Because the point is, we're not aiming at agricultural, bodily self-sufficiency. We're aiming at cultural conquest. This is Kali Yuga. And if we make that our goal, cultural conquest to music, dance, drama, movie, cinema, puppet shows, and then everybody will be happy. That's the purpose. That's why we're here. Hanuman was bringing the Ram's ring, Upadeshamrita to Sita and Ashokban, okay? So we're going to train people if you want to join us in our Ashokban communities, you'll be trained up in cultural conquest, And so you can have in South America, for example, maybe go there for 6 months, work on a movie. Maybe we'll rent a place for 1 year. The devotees like it, then they can go ahead and buy the property. It'll probably be in a small town where our director is, our film director. And devotees can come. If they want to come, you stay in the garden house until you're past the quarantine. And then you can move into the village proper and growing stuff, everything else. And maybe we'll have two sound stages. We can set up and use them to record our movie, working on a movie as our final contribution. Diary of a Traveling Creature. This is what we're doing. And we want to visit all these different people. We're doing interfaith dialogue, science and the Vedas, the Bhaktivedanta Library, world classical literature, and the practical arts like this. In those 5 areas, we want to talk to a lot of different people and exchange our ideas. We want to build bridges between Carl Jung and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, thank you very much. H.P. Swami, Anjana Sudha Academy, jayarama.us. So, any questions, complaints, or comments? Oh, my voice is falling apart. I'm going to leave my body in 2024. I've already arranged for my transportation.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
India has a very sophisticated culture with beautiful social systems and village life and everything. But when India kind of goes away from its own values, would it be safe to say that India might get a heavier reaction if it doesn't follow its own, wonderful cultural values?
I think he says that he because they also go Bharat Hoile Manusha Janmar Janmasarta Kakari Upakar. The Prabhupada says you have this wonderful heritage of spiritual and even spiritual sociologies, Daivi Varnar. And so he says if the people don't take this because they're being not, then they'll get more of a reaction because they've been given the ability. And so then this Krishna just has to show them, because you're doing this, you're going to get this, you idiot. So it's by being kind to them, he's showing them what the result is. So it's because in the United States we have certain nature and facility. If we don't use it properly, give nice technology to the world, nice innovation, then we're going to suffer. Yeah. Bigger gifts, bigger responsibility.
Yeah, I was just thinking in that way because it seems like it's really unfortunate that the pandemic is, having quite a effect in India right now. And
is it unfortunate or fortunate?
Well, I guess it's a purification maybe.
Yeah. Boy, Prabhupada said, scratch any Hindu. No, Prabhupada says, scratch any Indian and you'll find a devotee of Krishna. Of course, that was, maybe 50 years ago or something. But still, to my experience, traveling, everything else, it's a fact, that in India, there's still this resource. And when they're scratched, then they go to the temple, they go to the church, they do try and take advantage of these resources. Even Ayurveda, I've seen some very, very nice things coming out of Ayurveda, in terms of dealing with the pandemic crisis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Gurudeva, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev.
Okay, Subhal Sakadas from
I have a comment. I have a comment and a question, Gurudeva. The comment is a wonderful thanks for explaining about this village life. Fortunately, I grew up in a village, and until my engineering, I was in my hometown. It is a village. So, as you said, living in a village life is, I feel like, more living closer to the nature, and you truly understand the people or the emotions. You connect at a level you can respond quickly instead of be far. You will be moved by the situations and scenarios. So it's a wonderful life, and yes, I see it. Growing a boy of a village and all the way coming to America now, I see how much it is varied. So thanks for taking me back to my old days. So that's my comment. And my other question, or I want your opinion, is the money. So the money, whoever is invented, the paper money especially, when we traded a money with a product that is produced with hard blood and sweat, or sweat and blood, like that, and we are trading an absolute value with a relative value. So when in a crisis, real situation, this relative value is no value at all. When we lack of food or all these things, no matter how much money we have, it is not going to buy food or water or anything as such. But still, we go after this money and not realizing the real value. The more and more we trading this absolute value with the relative, we are losing this absoluteness, or why we are not realizing it, or why these intelligent people of this community are in bigger, the leaders, why don't they focus more on to this village life, how important, essential. You made a nice point saying that 90% of the people should live in village, only the 10% should, so then everything will be balanced, equal. Now it is exactly happening opposite. 90% of the people are living in cities and 10% living in, so I just wants to hear your comment, or did I understood right it, or anything different, Gurudev?
Yes, yeah. This is, in money is a inherent part of what do you call it? Wealth and communication of wealth at a distance. Again, Marshall McLuhan and sociologists, they study these things and how it's been represented in different fashions. We have so much resources. The Prabhupada says there should be no false notes, not backed up by gold or real goods. What is money? Money represents something. It's like the title to a piece of property, or if you have a title to an automobile. Okay, so money is supposed to represent something like that. So if it represents a certain amount of gold, okay, that's a substantial item that can be used for many things like that. Beyond that, if you have a certificate, so Prabhupada says that real wealth, of course, is good land, which means grains, cows, and Brahminical culture. Srilas Pandit, one of our friends, they were trying to buy a house, and they bought it in Los Gatos, which is very, very famous for a very, very good school system. And so everybody wants to have a house there because the school system is good. So it's very interesting. He's securing his wealth on the basis of Brahminical culture. Yeah. Another thing, of course, is the nice productive lands and grains and ghee. And so in the house in Vedic culture, Vastu, in the northeast corner, you have a basement, and you have nice golden pots full of grains that will last for years, and ghee and silk. And so you're meditating on your house, and you're thinking, okay, problems here, this and that. Well, we always can grow vegetables and things like that in our land. Those will always be there. But then ghee and grains, okay, then there's no fear, no anxiety about starving and all these kind of things. If tough times come. So yeah, real wealth, means ghee, grains, land, cows, which means milk, and then Brahminical culture, which of course allows us to use everything properly, to relate to things properly. And so then being able to communicate wealth at a distance, okay, then gold coins can be transferred, ghee and grains can be transferred. In village life, a certain day of the week, everybody would come and barter. Under this tree, everybody would exchange grains and ghee and do this kind of thing. And the craftsmen would come with their tools, and somebody would say, I need a new room built. And he would say, okay, let me talk to my friend here and stuff. Okay, three of us can come, and we need like this much. So we need about like 50 pounds of rice. Yeah, and there was very little money exchanged. People would directly barter us, and if they take over from his father, maybe in your village too. They would directly barter their labor in terms of ghee and grains and so on. So that's the thing, is that paper money is not bad, Prabhupada saying, if it represents. When I was a child, the gold standard was gotten rid of sometime before. When I was a child, it was a silver standard. All US notes represented a certain amount of silver. And I remember, okay, we're going off a silver standard, and everybody could take their money in and exchange it. And you wouldn't get silver coins, you would get nuggets, give a certain quality like that. So it's a whole separate thing about how the economics works. We can of course discuss this too, but there's a whole thing about economics, but we're not opposed to money and paper documents certifying things, but they should be backed up by something real. Probably saying that gold is real, some substantial value, you can make plates out of it and things like that. So is that okay?
Yes, Gurudeva, especially the point you made it, as long as the paper is making some value behind it or supported by, that makes sense actually, a deed, a house deed, a vehicle or a gold or something. But as it is yes, Gurudeva.
Trust.
Thank you.
In the chat here, we have some things, okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
It's a very nice topic and nice points you brought. Something to definitely consider. Um, my question is, this, at certain point in time, whether it's near future or little far future, people will looks like they will be forced to go to like local economies and things like that. Um, so considering that, what do you think about the young people who are still planning their career? How should they approach their career considering all this?
But by talking with Krishna, devotees, but Prabhupada says, for practical things, consult the Parashara Dharma Shastra and the Manu Samhita. Parashara says, I cannot give you rules and regulations, career tracks for everything in the Kali Yuga because it's so irregular. But I'll give you some like examples in different areas. So he comes up with different things, And he says, if there's for detailed knowledge, you can consult one sadhaka totally dedicated to spiritual life. So let me talk to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada already said, basically, head back towards a village-based life, which again doesn't mean that you can't develop mystical powers and different ways of communication. Prabhupada said television. Okay, he said 2-3 dozen. So Prabhupada's idea was that 3 dozen televisions were enough for the whole world. But then you start learning all kinds of local technology, And then I think some universities and some school lines are starting to do this. You can actually get educated in agrarian, for example, Japanese people are starting to produce hand-operated machines. So one block, you can produce all kinds of food, And with the machines, you can push the machine along with your hands, and it cuts it and binds it into little things, Okay, so a little bit of machine life and stuff, So many examples like that, and he says, if you haven't got someone like Prabhupada, a synod of 6 brahmanas can make same practical decisions. That's a basic principle. One of our disciples, Sundaradika and Srinivas and his daughter Sugopi. So our suggestion to her in the school is that she go ahead and study history, right? Take a diploma in history, because there is valuable content there. She's also studying Sanskrit. Now she's in Yale University. Okay? And then there's so much wonderful literature in Sanskrit, from the 4th century, there's incredible stories and biographies and histories about people traveling, which would make fantastic historical novels. So she can go through and take these things and write stories that will educate people, edify them. There's so much we need to do in terms of that thing. But that's Brahmanical occupation, And so we're kind of set up for Brahmanical occupation. If you want to go into medicine, there are branches. We know people. Dr. Jariwala, he was a biologist. He was working for the petrochemical industrial medical thing, but he gradually changed over to one German pharmaceutical company that was doing everything from organic sources and was giving a whole bunch of free vitamins and everything else to Africa and places like that where they needed them, Yeah. So he showed how you have to figure it out. You've got to use your intelligence and talk to people. And you start finding out, okay, this is the way it's heading. I'm not going to try and buy a private house. I'm going to try and figure out that our family, we're going to just make our house bigger and we're going to add this place to live. And, so all we're giving is perspective. And specifically, we're working on this idea of psychology and Carl Jung and all that kind of stuff, So we're developing that. So, chant Hare Krishna, read Prabhupada's books, and then ask, about 6 nice people, what are good careers? And again, it may be transition career. You start heading in medicine a certain way, you start heading in law in a certain way, like that. So I think we can do it. Make very, very nice transition by changing our careers.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Organic vitamins. Yeah. There are many organizations doing this besides us. That's what we're trying to do, is meet with them and talk with them. There are a lot of organizations, and a lot of them indirectly have been influenced by Prabhupada's movement. They don't know it, but they're giving their emphasis and perspective, and they become pantheists and that kind of stuff. So now we can build direct bridges with them, start trying to communicate directly about our ideas. So any other questions or comments? Our cow is listening.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a one thing related to pandemic that I come across, would like to share with you with your permission.
Of course.
Okay. So Maharaj, it is by Tulsidas Goswami, who has written Ramcharitmanas, which is his realization of Valmiki Ramayana in Audhi language. So he says that, which is what, 400, 500 years ago, he has written that thing maybe. So he says, I will translate it into English, but he says, Sabke ninda je jad karahi, te chamagadura hodav tarahi, sunahu tata bamana saroga, jinhate dukha pavahi sabaloga. What it means is that on this earth, because of the criticism and because of the sinful activities, some of these germs, or like chamgadar, they call it in that language, has been avtarit, means they have been descended to this earthly planet. And the effect of is that the human being will die. And that is clearly written there. And also he gives the solution in the next chopai, where he says, Rama Krupa Nasahi Sabaroga, Jata hi yehi bhati bane sanjoga, Sadaguru Baina Bachana Viswasa, Sanjagayana Visai ke asa. So the main point is that he's saying that the best medicine to for this pandemic situation that we are in is to stay in isolation, chant and be happy. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra and be happy.
Well, when I was with Radhika Raman, when all the rules and regulations came out from the state government, don't go to bars, keep the distance. And we were going down all the things, and a strict Brahmin like Subhag Maharaj, for example, in Calcutta, when we went on a bus, he would not sit on the seat. He would put a piece of newspaper on the seats, And everything that we're doing, practically speaking, Brahmin in Vedic culture does it automatically. In Thailand, if a lady raises her arms and a monk raises his arm, they shouldn't touch. Yeah. So this naturally keep the same spacing. It's just all these things that are in there, are automatic. Yeah. And then chanting Hare Krishna, of course, gives you, perspective, health, everything else. Chanting and dancing and kirtan, pranayama. So we got maybe there's a chat. What is in the chat here? I'll open the chat here. We'll finish off with the chat. Matthew says, Hare Krishna, are the Mahants of Vrindavan involved in the establishment of this village project? Which village project is that? We're trying to, boy, in Vrindavan, I don't know. Of course, it's a mixture of being attacked by the modernization, and and ISKCON is trying to promote projects. There are ISKCON projects which are exemplary. Food for Life, of course, is very powerful there in Vrindavan itself, and trying to encourage people to become self-sufficient, clean, and produce things again. So Vrindavan is a very special place in terms of rural development. Brijvasis are very special people. Our projects, we're just starting. We've always been interested in education, but now we're trying to promote Newer Shokvan, practical project in Peru, probably. And then after that, we'll probably head to India to leave our body. And one disciple there, he's a district forestry officer. He bought some little piece of property, big enough for a Newer Shokvan near Radhakund, so on. So yeah, you can live in the village. The boys would come and pick up the cows who were giving milk in the morning, and they would go off and maybe like 5 cows. The cows knew what they were doing. The boys could control them. They would meet up with their friends, and they would decide where they were going to go for the day. and all the cows would take eat and stuff. And at night, the boys would take them back, and of course, the cows all knew where their house was. And as soon as they got back, their calves were waiting and hopping up and down, and the cows were happy to be home and to give milk to their calves. And so every house, even in the village, would have fresh milk and stuff. And the cows would go off with the cowherd boys every day. Yeah. Okay, Jaya Guru Day, thank you so much. This is Chandramukhi Devi Dasi. Lots of laughs. It was not me. Oh, the other Claudia. Okay, sorry. Many Claudia Sheshus. So thank you all very much for this chance to participate in the in Burfi, in your programs. And we hope that we've been able to contribute something. And of course, we all want to see the project here in Houston developing. Why not? The Nilamadava Dam should actually extend from here to the Burfi farm. It'll be our territory. It's not very far. And all the new people that are moving in the condos, we got to make them all devotees. And, I mean, if you move into some property here, pretty soon it seems like you should start going to the restaurant. You got a beautiful restaurant just down the street. You can go play in the park, and as long as you don't smoke and drink, then people let you play in the park. And, the next thing is every single YMCA, by the way, is independent. There's no general control. They simply adopt whatever principles they want to from the thing. The YMCA right next door here could become a Hare Krishna YMCA. You get enough people who are members of the thing, you can vote. put a gate in the fence, and it becomes Young Man's Chaitanya Association, YMCA. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hanumat Prasad Maharaj ki jai.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. This is a nice topic.